So, as I mentioned before, I've been thinking a lot about freedom. So, I thought that was a good thing to talk about today, what that means. I think that word gets bandied about a lot in our culture in a way that maybe isn't so productive and can sometimes seem frustrating. So, to start, I'd like you all to just close your eyes for a moment and think of a moment when you felt free, whatever that means to you. And then I invite you to share that with a neighbor, preferably someone you did not come with, someone else. We'll just take a couple of minutes to do this. You can share with me. Love it. Love it. I should probably turn this off to do my sharing. So, all right. So, what a nice way to get started, getting everybody talking to each other and thinking about the topic. So, freedom can, is this coming through? Okay. Freedom can be many things. And often when we think about this word initially, a lot of people think about political things or economic, physical freedom, not being imprisoned physically, emotional freedom, and of course there's spiritual freedom. So Franklin Roosevelt actually had these wonderful 4 freedoms that he spoke about that I really like. Freedom of speech and expression, freedom to worship God in his own way, in each person's own way, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. And he believed that all nations and all peoples everywhere had the right to those basic freedoms. I would like to add to that freedom from oppression, freedom from hatred, freedom from persecution, freedom from hunger, a lot of other things that we could continue to add to that list. Mahatma Gandhi said, "I want freedom for the full expression of my personality." I thought that was an interesting way to think about freedom. He also said, "Freedom is not worth having if it does not include the freedom to make mistakes," which I thought was really beautiful. So that implies forgiveness from others and acceptance. I think these are all really important things, and they're all worth fighting for. But sometimes we can get a little overwhelmed because they might not be available to us right here in this moment. And then we can feel powerless, or like we don't have control over our lives or don't have access to freedom. There's another kind of freedom, however, that may be all the more important, and that's inner freedom. And so I was thinking about inner freedom, and that's really the focus of today's message. And I wanted to think about leaders and what different leaders that I admire had to say about freedom. And interestingly, the people that I thought of were all both spiritual and political leaders. So people like Nelson Mandela and Mahatma Gandhi and the Dalai Lama, Jesus, who else? Bob Marley. That's what I was thinking of, right? He was a big, spiritual leader, but also a powerful political leader in his country. So I wanted to share some of their perspectives on this inner freedom, because they all spoke about that, as well as talking about political issues. So I'll start with Mahatma Gandhi again. He said, "You can chain me, you can torture me, you can even destroy this body, but you will never imprison my mind. The moment the slave resolves that he will no longer be a slave, his fetters fall. Freedom and slavery are mental states." Martin Luther King said, "As long as the mind is enslaved, the body can never be free." He also said, "Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred." So I thought that was really important in this day and age. We're all arguing with each other and getting very bitter and hateful towards those who think differently from us. So let us not be enslaved by bitterness and hatred and anger. Nelson Mandela echoed this when he said, "As I walked out the door toward the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew that if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I'd still be in prison." So really beautiful thought. And I mentioned Bob Marley because I love his redemption song. Are you guys familiar with that? "Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but yourself can free your mind." It's a beautiful, beautiful song, redemption song. Really powerful. So, of course, I'd like to look at this from the unity perspective. So if you look at the teachings of Jesus, he said in John 8:32, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." So I found a really interesting article by Reverend Joanne Roden. Do any of you know her? She is at Unity. She's a senior minister at Unity Spiritual Center of Westlake, Ohio. Used to be in Edinburgh, Pennsylvania, I believe. And she said she was looking, in Webster's dictionary, and there were a lot of definitions of freedom that had to do with political and economic freedom. But she also found this definition, saying that freedom means that nothing is determined by anything beyond its own nature or being. So it was her perspective that when Jesus said, then you know the truth and the truth will set you free, that's the perspective he was seeing through. This idea that when we are really in touch with what is intrinsically at our core, we will then be free, the truth with a capital T. So she said, in unity, we share the truth of the Christ nature that is the true nature of each one of us. As we live from this Christ nature, we have the opportunity to experience true freedom. And she said this is reflected in Jesus' saying, "I and the Father are one." So I found this beautiful quote from the Dalai Lama that says, "I believe the most important thing for humankind is its own creativity. I further believe that in order to be able to exercise this creativity, people need to be free." So he's linking these two ideas of creativity and freedom. And for me, this is the very essence of that divinity within us. When we are being creative, that is God expressing through us. And we all have that capacity, whether it's in business or in art or in music or in speaking, whatever it is. We all have the capacity and actually the urge. It's part of being human, this need to be creative, and how that is inherently connected to our freedom. And if you think about totalitarian governments, one of the things that they try to do is clamp down on those expressions, whether it's expression of religion, expression, freedom of speech, in art, in the media. Those things are all, they try to control them in a way that they can then control the people. So going back to Roden, I'm not really sure which way she says her name, I've only seen it in print. She says the expression of freedom is in walking the path of love, forgiveness, and compassion. It is in understanding that no matter what we are accused of by others outside of ourselves, We remember the truth of what we are. It is in knowing God gives us exactly what we need when we need it, when we remember to turn to God with grateful expectation. It is in recognizing that we are more than the bodies we inherit. When we begin to live life from this perspective, determining our response by our own true divine nature, we begin to taste true freedom. So that is something that's accessible to all of us at all times. And it's what I was talking about really in that song, Desert to the Sea. We can walk around disconnected and feeling lost and feeling like there's nothing. But the moment that we connect to that inner divinity, we are called to creativity and to true expression and to freedom. So as most of you know, I love yoga and yoga philosophy. And when I read this was couched in the unity, language. But it's the same thing in yoga. The second two yoga sutras that outline all of yoga philosophy say that yoga is the settling of the mind into stillness. That's the second one. And the third one says, then, once we are in this state of mental stillness, we can see the brilliance of our own divine nature. And once that happens, when we find this place of true clarity and true vision, the veils of our ignorance are lifted, and we are no longer then responding to the world through our fear, our prejudices, our just automatic reactions to things. Then we can actually be free in how we respond. So that's real freedom, when you can let go of all of those other things, let those veils lift, and have this ability to respond in a truer, more loving, compassionate, free manner. It's not what most of us do, including me. Most of the time, I'm not even aware of where my reactions are coming from. I'm just, reacting from some previous situation. Somebody says something to me and something else conjures up and I react in that way. So it's an amazing thing to be able to tap into that freedom where we're no longer reacting in these kind of colored ways. I was listening the last couple of weeks to a tape, a DVD, about Tibetan dream yoga, which is really a Buddhist thing. The monk who was talking about this, his name is Lama Surya Das, and it was very interesting, the things that he had to say. So also, this is a very Buddhist perspective. Freedom lies in experiencing the now, is what he said. Letting go of everything that is not happening in the here and now, right now. Coming to rest in our true heart, our true soul. He said, this is the way that we find spiritual wellness and healing. So instead of trying to manage everything, he was talking about juggling these endless balls of illusion. That's what he called them. Endless balls of illusion. And in yoga and Buddhist philosophy, illusion is anything that is not permanent. So that's pretty much everything. It's our bodies, it's our thoughts. We think our thoughts are something permanent. No, they're just flitting about, coming and going, and they're very fickle. One day you like this person, the next day you don't like this person. One day you like that food, the next day you don't. One day you have this opinion about a certain politician, the next day you have that opinion about another politician. So it's, our minds and thoughts are very, very fleeting, but yet we get very, very attached to them. And I was also thinking about how in my life this happens a lot. Who has an endless to-do list? I do. And most days I'm frustrated because what I mapped out for my day is not what happened, and this chore that I thought would take me half an hour took me 8 hours, right? And then there's all this other stuff, and Mark's like, yeah. All this other stuff that needs to be done that I want to get done, and it's not getting done, and then I feel defeated and frustrated and tired. That's not very motivating for getting the rest of the stuff done the next day, right? But lately, I've been able to, here and there, and my garden is a good example. Anybody like to garden? It's a beautiful thing to do. Is it ever finished? No. There's big projects that need to happen at certain times and they get done, it looks beautiful and you love it. But if you don't tend to it, 2 weeks later, it might not look so lovely anymore, right? There's always something more to do. And so instead of getting frustrated lately, however, with my garden, I've realized it's just an ongoing adventure, an ongoing process, an ongoing journey. It doesn't matter if I finish everything today. I can take pleasure in what I am doing, and I can take pleasure at looking at it afterwards, whatever part I've done. But I can let go of all the rest of the stuff that didn't get done and just enjoy what I just did, both what I'm doing and what I just did, without beating myself up and continuing to hold all the rest of those balls in the air. I can just take one ball and focus on this one ball and then enjoy whatever's happening with that particular ball that I've got going on. That way I won't drop so many balls, right? And I won't feel near as frustrated. So I thought that was a wonderful reminder, this idea of juggling these balls of illusion, that all of it's going to go away anyway. My garden won't be there forever. I won't be there forever. The house I'm living in won't be there forever. So I can just enjoy it in its temporary state and not worry about trying to hold on to everything that's there. That's incredibly frustrating. So he said this instead we can inhabit God's grace in the here and now. And he said this is what the Buddha meant by awakening. It's really fully stepping into this moment and recognizing all the grace that's around us and inhabiting that grace with all of our presence. So he asked the question, how can we wake ourselves up to this reality? To live from the heart more fully, rather than other people's demands and expectations having control over us. So this is another way we're juggling these balls, right? We're trying to please this person and please that person and keep our children happy and keep our husband happy or our partner happy and our boss happy and our friends happy. Too many balls and too many illusions. Instead of worrying about what's at my core, how can I love people the most? How can I live in compassion? How can I recognize the beauty they have to offer me? How can I allow them to be who they are and where they are in their journey without wanting them to be some other way, which just leads to frustration? So that's what he said, to realize our true natures, to live from our truest and deepest desires, these desires for peace and light. So he said to let go of our attachments to outcomes, to the holds the past and the present have on us, our desires for specific outcomes in the future. That can be incredibly freeing. I used to work for a while in a president's office at a university, and one of my tasks was creating their annual report. So I had to collect all the reports from all the vice presidents and put them in this huge, big, book. All beautifully presented, all has to be perfect for the board of trustees, no typos, no whatever. And one of the vice presidents came in one day and gave me his report, and he said, "Man, it must be frustrating for you knowing nobody reads this." And I said, "Actually, no, it's not. I know that I'm putting together something to offer people so that they have it there to read if they choose to read it." And I really meant that. That's how I felt about that. It didn't matter to me if they read it or not read it. I was offering it for them to have and to look good and to be able to easily be read if they chose to read it. He's like, whoa, whoa. So I don't do that all the time. I did it with that project, that moment. But that's such a free way to live. And the Bhagavad Gita, actually, this sacred book from India, talks about how we have the right to our work. And we are to do our work with all of our heart and soul, but we do not have the right to the fruits of our labor. This sounds harsh to us. We're used to working to have, right? To have the fruits of our labor. But it's incredibly freeing if you just do the work with the best of your ability and not worrying about the outcome, which really we don't have a lot of control over. But we do have control over the work that we do. There's a sign in my neighborhood that says, whatever you are, be a good one. Which I just love. So that's a beautifully free way to live. So can we love and accept things and people as they are? Can we accept ourselves as we are? Can we unmask ourselves? Love and accept ourselves and others as we are and as they are. This is freedom. So I want to go back to Reverend Roden and a quote that I found from this article. And what does true freedom look like? This freedom results in peace of mind, freedom from worry, anger, bitterness, unforgiveness, and fear. This freedom results in an overall feeling of joy and abundance. The circumstances of my life will not always be perfect, and yet I experience an underlying sense of ease and grace. This freedom gives me the courage to speak my truth. This freedom allows me to respond in love rather than reacting in fear. This freedom allows me to see beyond the problem that is present in this moment and center in the remembering that all things are possible with God. So I just want to close by bringing back to mind this acronym of SMILE that I offered up last time. It's a way for us to begin on this journey, a way for us to start and kind of have some touchstones, some things that we can do to help us step into this kind of inner freedom. So the S in SMILE stands for stop, to take a breath, notice all the beauty around us. We can do this multiple times a day. You can set your timer. You can decide every hour on the hour you're just going to stop. It only takes a minute. You can do it no matter what you're doing, pretty much, unless you're running out of the house from a fire. The M is for moment. Bring yourself into the present moment. Breathe. Notice your surroundings, the colors, the smells, the way the wind or the air feels on your skin. Send love to the people around you. Find gratitude. The I is for initiate self-care. Ask yourself what you might do to better care for yourselves. It's a thing that we often forget or decide is not that important, but in fact, we can't give the most of ourselves to the world and to other people unless we're getting enough sleep, getting proper food, having proper connection with other people, connection with nature, etc. So go take a bubble bath. That's my recommendation. The L is for letting go of fear, and also letting go of our illusions, letting go of our attachments to other people and how they act and what they say, letting go of the fruits of our labor, but especially letting go of fear, recognizing that we don't know the outcome of any given event. It might seem like it will be horrific, but we don't really know what the long-term outcome is going to be. It might be fabulous. And the E is for both expand and engage. So expand your vision and engage positively with life. Remember your true divine nature and act accordingly. So we can step back from all these temporary thoughts and beliefs we have to gain perspective. We can allow ourselves to envision all the positive possible outcomes of any given thing. Often we're very fixated on the negative. This terrible thing's going to happen, this terrible thing's going to happen, this terrible thing's going to happen, when in fact, for each of those, you might have there's certainly a positive outcome that might happen. If we allow ourselves to envision it, it's much more likely to happen, and you'll feel better in the meantime. And if you're passing through a difficult time, know that this too shall pass. Everything moves on. And then you can make a decision to actively engage in a positive way with your here and now. That's a great question to ask at any given moment. How can I actively and positively engage with my here and now? It's not some imagined future, not some past event that happened last night or a year ago. So in closing, I wanted to come back to this idea, then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And there's a passage just a few verses later in John where Jesus says, abide in me. And I think that's when we really abide in that inner divinity and love, then we will find true freedom. Thank you. So we're going to move into the meditation, and I'm going to play this song of mine, sing this song, I Am the Way, which was inspired in part by I am the way, the truth, and the life, which is associated with the passage I just ended with. But it was also inspired by this beautiful passage from one of the Upanishads, these beautiful, very, very, very old sacred texts from India. So I invite you to just go ahead and settle in. I'll read this passage, and then I'll sing the song, and then we'll just sit for a while with some guided meditation. Then God spoke, I am the breath of life, and I am the consciousness of man. Adore me and think of me as life and immortality. The breath of life is one. When we speak, life speaks. When we see, life sees. When we hear, life hears. When we think, life thinks. When we breathe, life breathes. I am the way that breathes in you. I am the way that speaks through you. I am the way that lives in you. I am the way. I am the way. I am the truth that breathes in you. I am the truth that speaks through you. I am the truth that lives in you. I am the truth. I am the way. With every breath, breathe in me. With every step, live in me. I am the light that breathes in you. I am the light that speaks through you. I am the light that lives in you. I am the light. I am the way. I breathe in you. I speak through you. I am the way. So just begin to feel that breath in your body, slowly moving in and out. Feel your connection to the floor, to the chair you're sitting in. And just move into this present moment. I invite you to imagine a beautiful flower sitting right at your heart center. And just imagine it blossoming open, connecting you to this deep love and creation that is within you, this inner freedom. And I offer you these affirmations for living in freedom. I can never change the past, but I can always do my best here and now. Negativity is a form of suffering, to which I respond with compassion. The only reality is the present moment. The past and the future exist only in my mind. I love myself unconditionally. I refrain from using speech against myself or against others. I take care of and give love to my one body. I can always connect to the present moment by focusing on my breathing. I view my fears as information. When I overcome my fears, my life becomes magical. I practice observing my pain, whether physical or emotional, without reacting to it, in order to let it come and go. Listening with my whole attention in order to understand rather than to respond is the best gift I can give to anyone. I regularly remind myself of all the good things in my life I tend to take for granted. I am grateful. So let us take these affirmations into our moment of silence. Into the stillness. And now, as you are ready, bring your attention back to your breath. Begin to once again notice your feet on the floor, your seat in the chair, the sounds in the room, the sounds of the children across the hall, the presence of others. Take a nice deep breath. Exhale with a sigh. And as you're ready, open your eyes, coming back into the room.